Hello, and welcome to Inclusive Hiring Decoded, a global view of best practices for interviewing and supporting people with disabilities. Let me start by giving you a brief visual description. I'm Tarena Shanaberger. I have brown hair, I'm wearing glasses, and my favorite Microsoft t-shirt that says Empower Every Person. I'm standing at my desk in my home office with some shelves behind me on the wall that display a regular rotation of artwork from my two kids. My role at Microsoft is an inclusive hiring program manager. What this means is I help run our hiring programs for people with disabilities. This includes our Neurodiversity, formerly Autism program, and our Ability Hiring program. I work closely with the team in talent acquisition, as well as many groups across Microsoft. In addition to overseeing our hiring events, I facilitate the onboarding for our new hires to ensure they have a supportive experience. And I continuously work on ways we can better support existing employees at Microsoft through accommodations and training materials. Today's session is focused on providing best practices in 3 areas. We've structured the learnings to be applicable across a wide audience. So if you're a candidate looking for a job, or if you're a hiring manager looking to bring in new talent, or if you just have a general interest in creating supportive structures within your company, then this content will be relevant to you. The 3 topics we're focused on in today's session include the importance of training, creating support systems by tapping into your ERGs and BRGs, and empowering candidates to request accommodations. I will introduce each section by covering best practices that we've learned through our inclusive hiring programs. And then I will turn it over to the amazing team of experts I have joining me for this session. Each topic will be summarized through their shared experiences and lessons that they've learned along the way. I will close out with questions, so make sure to submit those throughout the presentation by typing in the chat window. Okay, let's get started. Our first topic to cover is the importance of training. As part of our inclusive hiring programs at Microsoft, we found that there's two key groups that are critical to train. The first is your interviewers and recruiters, those that are working directly with candidates. It's a good idea to provide disability-specific trainings if a candidate has disclosed that they have a disability. For our hiring programs, we provide training specific on neurodiversity, and then we provide trainings across all disability segments for our ability events. This way, the interviewers are prepared in advance, and they can be more inclusive to help you attract key talent. The second group is the manager and the team. By getting the manager and team ready, this sets everyone up for success. Understanding and embracing disability etiquette will help set the right tone and support within the team. As part of our hiring programs, we provide training for all of our managers and teams prior to the new employee starting. On the right side of the slide, I've shared links to various trainings that Microsoft has made available to anyone. If you would like to access these trainings, just download the presentation deck for this session. The links are on slide 5. On-demand trainings work great because they can be accessed by anyone, anytime. However, we've found that our employees benefit the most from interactive and facilitated trainings. To further expand on the importance of training, I would now like to introduce our training partner, Sara Gardner. In addition to her role as the director of the Neurodiversity Navigators program at Bellevue College, Sara has been educating our interviewers, managers, and teams on neurodiversity in the workplace since our program began in 2015. All right, I'm going to send it over to Sara.
Thank you so much, Tarena. I'm excited to be here today. I am Sara Gardner. I'm a white female presenting person with short light brown hair, and I'm wearing glasses, a royal blue shirt, and a light blue jacket. And in the background are some plants, a picture frame, and an elliptical, and you maybe can see my refrigerator way in the background. My story starts as a single mom running a successful independent sales business from my home in Southern California when both my son and I were diagnosed with autism in 2002. I began my education and career in disability and autism services at that time, starting with teaching parenting classes at United Cerebral Palsy, advocating at IEP meetings, and running a 700 family support group. When we moved to the Puget Sound area, in order for my son to go to college, I designed and developed the Autism Spectrum Navigators program at Bellevue College, which is now the Neurodiversity Navigators program. And I've been the director of that program for 10 years. Along the way, I started doing training workshops for Microsoft. My son graduated from college, got a job, bought a home 2 miles away from me, and we're doing great. So let's jump in and talk about who should receive training. As Tarena said, recruiters, interviewers, managers, and coworkers, the teams of the new hire. And why should we train people? We found that it really reduces stigma and dispels stereotypes. So without training, people often have unanswered questions or ideas about what a new hire will be like, or even what someone they're going to be interviewing will be like, that are really very incorrect and leave them not knowing how to communicate, not knowing how to interact, feeling very awkward themselves. And so by doing this training, we can dispel those stereotypes, reduce that stigma, and help them understand that the new hire is simply another person on their team. But we also can provide tools for interaction and communication that helps everyone feel more comfortable. Another really important question is who should design and deliver this training? So the picture that I have on this page indicates that. It's a little hand drawing of a square stick person, and that person is wearing a rainbow colored infinity pin to represent that they are a neurodivergent person themselves. And they enthusiastically are holding up a marker and drawing on a board that has a light bulb, an excited light bulb on it. And so that's to indicate that the people that should be delivering this training should be part of the community that they're training about. They should have that lived experience, but they should also be considered a subject matter expert. So in addition to lived experience, they should also have professional experience working with that population and education about that population. Just want to briefly touch on what is neurodiversity, the neurodiversity umbrella. The term was coined by Judy Singer quite some time ago, but the person who coined this phrase here says it best: neurodiversity, the notion that conditions like autism, dyslexia, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, should be regarded as naturally occurring cognitive variations with distinctive strengths that have contributed to the evolution of technology and culture rather than mere checklists of deficits and dysfunctions. And that's Steve Silverman in his book, Neurotribes. And so we have this picture of umbrellas with the different types of things that can be included in neurodiversity: dyspraxia, dyslexia, ADHD, autism, Tourette's syndrome, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, plus a lot of other things that people can include in that. And we want to look at neurodiversity and bring people into a company looking at it through a social justice or a descriptive model of disability rather than a deficit or medical model or prescriptive model. So rather than seeing the person as the problem and trying to fix that person, we want to see barriers to access as the problem and seek to empower the person, believe that there are many acceptable ways of being in the world. So as this picture shows, with 3 green apples and 1 red apple that someone is trying to paint green to look like all the others, we really want to preserve the unique characteristics of all the apples in our basket, if you will. So we want to have green apples and red apples and all the colors of apples. And truly, we want to have all the fruits in the baskets and maybe even include some vegetables. And the last thing I want to talk to you about today, and this is part of the training that I do for Microsoft and other companies, is talking about Edward T. Hall's cultural iceberg. And this concept is really helpful in helping people understand that not only is neurodiversity have some disabling features, but it's also a culture to itself. So Edward T. Hall was a cultural anthropologist who specialized in nonverbal communication. And this is important because many neurodivergent people, especially autistic people, have difficulty decoding nonverbal communication. So this is a picture of an iceberg, and it shows at the top surface culture, which Edward T. Hall said is what we usually think about when we think about a culture. We think about flags and festivals and fashions and music, performances, games, arts and crafts, literature, language. But what really makes up a culture are the deep culture areas that one must live in a community and observe through, learn through nonverbal observation. And so when you grow up in a community and you're learning it this way, it just seems to be the way things are. So things like communication styles and rules, facial expressions, gestures, eye contact, personal space, touching, body language, communication patterns in different social situations, handling and displaying of emotions, tone of voice, notions of courtesy and manners, friendship, leadership, cleanliness, modesty, beauty, concepts of self and time, past and future, fairness and justice, rules related to age, sex, class, family, etc., attitudes towards different people in your lives, competition versus cooperation, relationships with animals, age, sin, death, approaches to religion, courtship, marriage, raising children, decision-making, and problem solving. So really everything that we do is part of the culture. And this deep culture is where autistic and neurodivergent people often get in trouble at work, relationships, and school. And so sometimes people think, well, we should just put them in a social skills class and teach them. So here's where that goes wrong. These things are flexible, and different expectations exist in every work team, every group of friends, every family, every classroom, every city, every state, every country. So just a really quick example is I've lived in 3 places in my life: Buffalo, New York, Los Angeles, and Seattle. And the way one is expected to drive in those 3 places is very, very different. And so learning the culture of driving, having driven in Southern California for 25 years and then coming to Seattle, it was a huge change. People had to tell me what to do, though. I did not understand or could not figure out why, when I was driving down the road, everyone would pull over to the side of the road and let me pass. I didn't know what that was about until someone told me I was tailgating. In Southern California, there is no such thing as tailgating. That's how we drive. So anyway, that's just one small example to help you maybe understand that you can't didactically teach a neurodivergent person every single piece of culture because it shifts everywhere you go. There's always some little thing that's different. So instead, here's your takeaway. When someone behaves or communicates differently in any of these deep culture areas, take a step back and do what a friend of mine says: manage your stories. Manage what you're telling yourself about what this person's intent is or what they were trying to say. And instead, ask a question. Ask them, I'm not sure I understood what you meant. Could you say that again another way? Or if you think they might be angry with you, the story, this is from Brene Brown. The story I'm telling myself is that you're angry with me right now. Is that true? Are you angry? Let's talk about it. Or if you think they didn't understand you, just say, I'm not sure I made myself clear. Let me try this again. Let me say it again another way. Likewise, own your own boundaries on deep culture things. If someone's standing too close to you, simply say, I need a little more personal space. I'm going to move over here. Don't make it the other person's deficit to fix. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and I hope to see you all again sometime soon. I'm going to turn this back over to Tarena.
Thank you, Sara. In all of the trainings I've been lucky enough to be a part of that you presented, I've actually never heard the story about you tailgating. And I think that's just great. I love that story. So I think one thing that's really important to highlight that, Sara talked about the importance of training, and it's really important always for all disabilities, but she really touched on non-apparent disabilities and how oftentimes people perceive somebody with a disability because they use a wheelchair, or maybe they're blind or they're deaf. But when the disability is non-apparent, I think the training is just as important, if not more so, because you're educating other people that just help provide a better culture of inclusion for everyone. So thank you, Sara. Next, we're going to move on. We're going to go over ways to partner with your employee resource groups to help create a supportive system for your candidates, your new hires, and all employees. So let's start by breaking this down into the life cycle of employment. During the interview process, we invite representatives from our disability ERG to participate in the hiring events. And through informal group discussion, they share information about Microsoft, the disability community, and our inclusive culture. By including this type of informal discussion prior to interviews, our candidates are able to ask some of those general questions that may be top of mind for them. And they also have mentioned that it helps reduce that nervousness going into their actual interviews. For new employees that get hired through our programs, we assign a community mentor from our disability ERG, and they provide a structured mentoring support during the employee's onboarding stage. And at Microsoft, we've seen that these mentors, although they help with that initial information that everyone needs when starting at a new company, they oftentimes become trusted advisors. And the final most important way that I think you can partner with your ERGs is by ensuring you have systems built to learn and receive feedback directly from the people with disabilities. At Microsoft, we realize we're on a journey and we're making changes as we go based upon the feedback that we receive. We now have regular meetings with a group of employees from the neurodiversity community at Microsoft. In a welcoming and safe discussion group, we talk about everything from transitions that our program is looking to make to ensuring that we're headed in the right direction and ways that our program team can partner with the neurodiversity community to create more supports for all employees. It's a great partnership, and I would highly recommend that employers looking to start programs and those employers with existing programs create your own version of ways that you can learn from others by getting that very important and direct feedback. Next, I would like to introduce Sara Klein. Sara helped build the U.S. Disability ERG at Accenture and will be sharing with us how tapping into the employee resource group can be a key enabler to personal and professional fulfillment, along with key highlights of Accenture's disability ERG journey and its specialized initiatives that are shaping the culture of inclusion and empowerment at Accenture. Over to you, Sara.
All right, thank you, Tarena. I look forward to learning more and more about your ERG. And there's definitely some similarities, and we are definitely on our journey ourselves, and we continue to learn and grow. So as Tarena mentioned, I am Sara Klein. I'm a white woman. I have curly blonde hair that's pulled back in a ponytail right now, and I'm wearing a dark gray shirt. I'm in my home office, and I have a chair and a lamp behind me, as well as some retro pictures of some Cubs people behind me. My husband from Chicago is a fan of the Cubs, so I have to share this office with him. So there's a tribute to him and to his love. I'm part of the product management team within Accenture Products and Platforms, and I do lead Accenture's U.S. Disability Employee Resource Group. And it's really in this capacity that I have what I believe to be a privilege to help drive culture changes and to be part of amazing initiatives for disability inclusion. So my story for you today is about how I got connected to our ERG and the difference that it has made in my life, as well as highlighting some of the efforts that I genuinely believe are shaping the culture of inclusion and empowerment for us. So being a part of the ERG is something very near and dear to my heart. The reason, among many, is that I am a person with a disability. My husband, my sons have a disability, and and especially as leading our disability ERG, just so many of my friends and my colleagues also have disabilities. So this is definitely my community that I connect with. I have significant hearing loss, and I'm unable to hear certain tones, which means that my brain has to compensate for those sounds that I don't hear, and it fills in the blanks for me. Sometimes, it feels like I have a live Wheel of Fortune game show that's going on in my head. It's kind of like a fun way to describe it, but it's fitting, really. So about 6 years ago, I lost one of my hearing aids. For the life of me, I cannot explain how I did that, but it was devastating just because I depend on them so much. However, it was also right around that time that Accenture had announced that our health insurance would begin covering them, which was huge because they're very expensive pieces of technology. So I decided that I would wait it out for those few months before those benefits kicked in. And it was worthwhile, but at the same time, it was a very challenging time for me. Because I only had the use of one ear, it was hard for me to know where sound was coming from. And think back to the days before COVID, we were working in an office environment that was largely an open space, which just made it even more challenging for me. I felt very disoriented. Phone conversations, which of course, we rely on, especially, right now we're more used to the face-to-face, with the cameras that we have, but at the time, it was really challenging to have conversations with teammates across, other locations because I couldn't read lips and I couldn't rely on the visual cues that I can in face-to-face conversations. I felt very isolated. I felt embarrassed. I shouldn't have, but that was just my feelings, that I was experiencing at the time. And I always, worried about, the burden that I was on other people. So it wasn't a good feeling. But I had a really good friend of mine encourage me to talk to my career counselor, Eric, about the possibility of the project purchasing high quality noise canceling headsets for me. I did, and he was extremely supportive of me. And he encouraged me to do some research to find the best headset, that would meet my personal needs. So that was it was during the course of that research that I happened upon an internal site at Accenture for the U.S. Disability ERG. At the time, of course, when I onboarded, I knew about the ERG. I knew about, the benefits and things of that nature, but I had not yet connected myself to being one who needed that. So it just hadn't clicked for me yet. But I saw this internal site at the right moment, and there on the page was the statement that was written boldly that said, at Accenture, it's okay to talk about disabilities. And it still gives me chills because it was a moment for me that was, and I don't say this lightly, it was a life-changing moment for me. It was then that I embraced the idea of my own disability and that it was okay, that I was okay. So also on that page was a call for volunteers from Kevin Smith, who was and still is the executive sponsor to help grow the disability ERG. So my thought was, I wish I would have known this. I can help other people know about this. And so I answered that call to start one up in my home office of Austin, Texas. And shortly thereafter, I suppose he saw my eagerness for this. He asked me to take on a role at the national level to help grow teams across the U.S. I said yes, and that was one of the best decisions that I've made. So that was how our journey began. And so now just to shift the focus a little bit to the benefits of ERGs. Now, I won't be able to speak to all of our efforts or even all of our partnerships that we have with amazing organizations like the Challenged Athletes Foundation and Best Buddies. But because disability is a broad concept that includes such a wide variety of impairments, we've launched a number of specialized programs to support, affected employees. And one of I say is our most successful initiative, perhaps it's my favorite initiative, is a monthly series that we have. It's called In My Shoes. And we launched that back in 2015. That was really our big launch, I think, for our national growth. Each month, we have up to 150 people join these calls, during which one of our members will share their personal experience with a disability. All career levels have participated in the calls, which is good opportunity to grow and to get exposure. So it's helpful for our careers as well. But it also includes our senior leaders who have shared their story. So it's also setting the example of leadership in this space. So again, all levels, all people, none of us professionals were sharing our story, our experience, and, which at the same time is really emphasizing the importance of self-identification. This series is an opportunity for our members to educate us and others about their disability, our challenges, our triumphs. And it's always so encouraging to see the true connections that people make, and the realizations that, we're not alone in this journey. So certainly true for me. And actually, this forum was the trajectory for me in gaining clarity to challenges that my son was experiencing, and was able to get him to the diagnosis and the support he needed because of what I learned from my colleagues. With each story shared, there's lessons to be learned about how people with disabilities can best feel included. Most importantly, this sends the message that it is okay to talk about disabilities in the workplace. And there are processes in place to ensure that our employees can bring their authentic self to work. So just a couple more briefly about some additional efforts we have. Our ERG launched our Mental Health Allies program, which is made up of employee volunteers who are trained to provide mental health awareness and education, and to guide them to the right resources. We do not purport to be the experts, but we are a supportive community to guide. And really, we serve as a go-to resource for employees who are looking for support and information about the benefits that are available at Accenture and beyond. And we had developed our Autism Empowerment and Support Group, which is an effort committed to offering insight, resources, and support in safe and open environments, which from the beginning was to empower parents and caretakers of children with autism. And as we are maturing, into a more diverse effort for our neurodiverse colleagues. So those are just a few, but valuable opportunities that our ERG and ERGs in general can bring. So again, I thank you so much for the opportunity to share this story with you. So Tarena, I think that's back to you.
Oh, thank you, Sara, for joining us. And I love that the phrase that you said a couple of times, which is at Accenture, it's okay to talk about disabilities, and that's what caught your eye and helped you to get so involved. And as an existing employee, I think support groups are so important within companies. As somebody who's looking for a job, I would definitely recommend looking into the culture with the companies that you're looking at. Go to those ERG and BRG pages, see how active they are. And as employers, definitely, again, include your ERG members in your hiring events so that you start out showing that culture and that culture of inclusion for people with disabilities early. Moving on, our final topic is focused on accommodations and empowering candidates to request those accommodations to create a successful hiring opportunity for them. Some things that employers can do to set up candidates for success and avoid any surprises that may come up on either end during the interview are to start by making it simple. If the process is too complex or not accessible, then it discourages people from requesting the accommodations that they need to be successful in an interview or later on in their job. You also want to ensure that you have multiple points in your process where you are asking if somebody does need an accommodation, from the point when they're applying for the job to going in for an interview, and then during their onboarding. It's critical that at all points within this process, they have an opportunity to request an accommodation. And then finally, make sure your recruiters are trained to inform the candidate about the interview process and what it's going to be like, so they can determine if there are accommodations that might be helpful to them. The second bullet point on the list is common accommodations that are built into the structure of our programs. However, each candidate has the option to request specific accommodations based upon their own individualized needs. You'll see that not all accommodations are things. They can be extended interview time or longer and more frequent breaks. It could be writing down your questions in advance or having questions written and available during the interview, or the option to communicate verbally or in writing. Now that we're in this virtual world and many of our interviews are happening over the Teams platform, our candidates have time to process their thoughts and write down some of their answers, and that has worked out really well. Some other accommodations that we found that are pretty common during interviews at Microsoft are CART services and sign language interpreters. Always remember that disclosure of a disability is a very personal and private decision, and an individual deciding to disclose should be respected, acknowledged, and the process should be simple to follow. Our final presenters are based out of the Microsoft office in India. Their story has been evolving over the last few years. Sonia Story, who is part of the global university recruiting team, will take it from here and share their story with you. Sonia, over to you.
Thanks, Tarena. Hi, I'm Sonia Story. I'm a brown Indian woman of Asian origin with short black hair, wearing a green shirt with some bright red flowers on it. And of course, I'm wearing black and red specs. I'm right now sitting in my home office on a black chair with a white board behind me and a blue curtain. And this combination just makes it a great surrounding for me to work from home. I'm a part of the global university recruiting team. And in my role, I lead the efforts of university recruiting at Microsoft India. This means that my team and me are committed to empower every student on this planet to realize their dreams with Microsoft. Alongside, I'm also passionately driven to work close on pursuing the journey of diversity and inclusion. As I do this, I'm also on a learning journey to being a successful parent to 2 budding millennials, along with my husband for 2 decades. My story goes way back in my childhood, where one of my best friends at school lost her hearing ability as part of a severe virus exposure. Well, honestly, I've had my early learnings of being inclusive while making things accessible for her. And those were necessarily learnings I went through without even knowing that I had embarked on the journey. Many years later, today, by the virtue of roles and related exposure, I've had the opportunity to constantly bring learnings, awareness, and storytelling interventions as a required boost in this area. I'm here to represent some of the efforts being put in place towards our inclusion journey, which has helped the Team India make significant progress in terms of hires and some great candidate experiences. Needless to say, I'm fortunate to be a part of an organization which allows us to work outside the scope of a written job description. And precisely that is why we continue to attempt various elevations in our efforts and do not hesitate to take big, bold bets towards our goals. Of many efforts being given shape in the global talent acquisition space in India, one of the active efforts is our work with a local nonprofit organization since about 3 years now. And that is in mentoring and enabling blind and low vision students. I'm going to hand it off to Kiran now to share more on this effort along with his story. Kiran, over to you.
Thank you, Sonia. I'm Kiran, Bangalore. I'm a brown Indian man, also of Asian origin. I have short black hair. I'm wearing rimless glasses today. I'm wearing a Oxford-style light blue shirt. I'm in my home office. I'm standing in front of a cabinet. I have a little succulent plant in a red pot behind me, a colorful painting of a ship to give you a feel for where I'm standing. I'm a group manager in the Azure Cloud division at Microsoft, and my work involves onboarding and making partners successful in the partner ecosystem with Microsoft. I'm also one of the hiring managers who makes hiring decisions at the university hiring events. I have been at Microsoft for about 13 years and been in the industry for about 20. I grew up in Bangalore, and one of my older cousins was born without a limb, and his struggles, to kind of make it and get to a point where he represented India in the Paralympics, was a huge inspiration for me. Over the years, I've always wanted to help and give back and do something there, but I just didn't know where to start. A few years ago, I participated in the Microsoft annual hackathon, and I took this opportunity to kind of work with a local NGO And this NGO works with blind students. And we were set out to solve this problem where we were trying to create a little device that with voice prompts help blind people navigate inside a building. Now, the hackathon itself didn't actually work, but the whole experience, opened my eyes to a number of problems that blind people face today. And, I was super passionate about trying to use technology to solve some of these problems. This led me to try out different things. And one of the HR partners brought me in contact with the Inclusive STEM organization in India. And I was just super impressed with the work they do to enable PWDs. We sat down and we brainstormed with them of the several possible ways in which we can, further this relationship to help this community. So first, we started off and implemented a little mentorship program. We brought in about 20 students and had them connected with, different people across the India Development Organization. And working closely with these students gave us, a renewed understanding and appreciation for their ability to code, just like any other student. Next, we partnered with them on their, annual conference, and we sponsored the conference, but also did a bunch of technical talks at the conference. We, partnered with them with some of our employees actually working on the hackathons with them. And I got the honor of being the judge. And the hacks we saw were just, like at par with any of the hacks I'd seen, at other events. This year, we've renewed our efforts, like we do every year, working with this organization on a more renewed mentorship program. The annual hackathon is coming up. We have several hiring events set up. But over the years, this awareness has helped us onboard several students, both as interns and full-time employees at Microsoft. At Microsoft, our mission is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to just achieve more. And we expect each of us, no matter which level, function, role that we play, to create an environment where people of diverse backgrounds can come to work and just bring their best work in and be able to do anything they want to do. And with this partnership with iSTEM, we wish to impact PWD students through mentorship so that they're able to land internships at other companies and hopefully with us at Microsoft. Thank you for listening in and attending Ability.
Thank you, Kiran. While we work on empowering reach outs, like you just heard from Kiran, Microsoft India is also continuously engaged in providing reasonable accommodation to our candidates, which of course plays a crucial role in successful hiring. Being able to practice inclusive behaviors and the ability to reach out and check for accommodations sets one up for continued success and acceptance on a more broader canvas. The talent acquisition teams at Microsoft India constantly engage in conversations with candidates and work internally to ensure their requirements are not only heard, but of course, reasonably accommodated. These are done through deep-rooted commitment efforts in talks, webinars, summits, and dedicated days of learning with, of course, an intentional effort to be better than yesterday on this continued journey. I'm happy to be presenting one such employee experience to you who has had consistent experience with us while being a candidate, an intern, and now an employee. Handing it off to Rishabh for sharing his story of accommodation with Microsoft India. Rishabh, over to you.
Thanks, Sonia. And I am Rishabh Jain here, and I am a brown Asian Indian man. I have short black hair, and I am wearing a light blue shirt, and I am in my home office. So I am an engineer on the Edge browser team here in India, and I work to empower web users with the browser notification. Coming to my story, from the very childhood, I have a deep interest in sciences and technology, and I decided I will pursue the same career after my high school. But in India, the engineering schools are not so much welcoming for people like me. But with the help of my teachers and parents, I able to come up those challenges, and I end up in one of the premier institute in India. So I land up at Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee. So I choose applied mathematics as my major there. So freshman year at the university was a tough challenge. There was no system in place, and this was their first time they are dealing with this kind of disability. But I worked with some of my professors, and day by day the things are getting better. So in my sophomore year, I developed a huge interest in machine learning and artificial intelligence. I do a couple of research projects and also a research fellowship, but then I realized this is not what I'm looking for, and I must be doing something where I can see my impact right away in form of products which users use. So I reach out to many companies, but what I listen all about is, hey, we don't have the support system for the accommodation which you are asking. So I was in this exclusive STEM hackathon at the Bangalore, and Microsoft gave me a chance to appear for the interview for their summer program, and I able to make through it. So the things which really work out for me is the Microsoft is very open in listening the accommodation which I am asking. So that there was a regular conversation between me and the recruiter where we are brainstorming the solutions, like what can be done. So one of the example is test at that particular point of time was not accessible, so that was converted into an interview. And like I was allowed with my own device, so I can code in my comfortable coding environment. And things like transportation and inside navigation in the office on the interview side really helped me to perform at my best capabilities. So now I'm working full time. There are many competition in place, but every day we are learning new things, like how we can make our meeting more accessible, even that we are improving our tech stack, and we are working also how we can make recreational activities more accessible. So if I look back, the self-advocacy play a very important role in my success till now, and I we should practice self awareness, and we should ask what accommodation we require, and the brainstorming had to be done from both the end. This will really help us in inclusive hiring. And thanks very much for the platform. Over to you, Sonia.
Thank you, Rishabh. Thank you. And wish you continued energy to practice self advocacy and continue to inspire everyone around you. I do want to share that this is a continuously evolving journey and not a destination. And with that, I will sign off on behalf of Team India and hand it back to Tarena. Thanks for having us here.
Thank you, Sonia, Rishabh, and Kiran. What I liked really, Rishabh, that you mentioned is that the accommodations allowed you to perform at your best. And at the end of the day, that's really what it's all about. We want our candidates to be successful. And at Microsoft, we want to be holding on to that key talent. So Rishabh, happy to have you. And thank you, Sonia and Kiran, for sharing your stories. As we close out this session, I can't go without highlighting some numbers and facts that drive our programs towards continued growth and development. About 15% of the global population, that's more than 1 billion people, live with disabilities. Now keep in mind that these are pre-pandemic numbers. Given the impact of the pandemic on the disability community, we know that these numbers are growing, and we don't yet know the full impact that COVID is going to have on the disability community. Same thing goes for the unemployment rate for people with disabilities, which is more than twice the average. Remember that disabilities come in all forms, both visible and invisible, mild to severe. I mention this because by focusing on the 3 areas we discussed today, training, support systems, and accommodations, you can create inclusive experiences for everyone, your customers, employees, applicants, all that have disabilities that maybe you can't see. Thank you for joining us, and thank you again to our presenters, Sara, Sonia, Kiran, and Rishabh. Next, we're going to answer some questions that have been coming in throughout the session.